Hello. I am very tempted to tell you everything I like, everything I don't like, without a filter, without calculation, that I might burn bridges, that I might make some people happy and some people not so happy. But I think that ship has sailed because I already said enough on this channel that has shut the door for many humans who are cloistered in their own bubbles of thinking. This video is not about information. It's about feeling, about my mental life, about my own bubbles of thinking. I am trying my best to test my boundaries and maybe, just maybe, inspire you to test your own boundaries. I feel tired, energized, hopeful, hopeless, sometimes all at once, almost every day. It's the hustle of work, the insane news from the climate crisis, the war in Ukraine, the United States trying to become a theocracy, countries in Latin America showing signs of emancipation from capitalism, the idea that we live in very interesting times when it is actually possible for capitalism to end, in spite of some people saying that there is no alternative and that it is impossible to imagine the end of capitalism, and the tangible prospects of a well-being economy and the degrowth movement. This is my bubble of thinking. That's one struggle. Another struggle is to see these bubbles multiplying and growing thick skins, bubbles that do not talk to each other. They don't know about each other. They don't care to know about each other. And if they learn about the existence of other bubbles, they take an immediate strong position against, in favor, or utter dismissal. I'm intentionally vague here, and I will avoid dropping names. The thickest skin is on the bubble of beliefs that our way of life is non-negotiable, immutable, quite simply natural and normal. I am immune to this bubble, but it is impossible not to see it and touch it every single day. I have learned over the years, after reading thousands of pages, how to deal with my emotions, how to react. Not with fake posing and studied camera angles, perfect makeup like those YouTube and TikTok celebs. These emotions are my daily life and probably yours as well. Almost every piece of news lives in this bubble or talks about it. This is capitalism. This is the idea that our material life must follow the rules of accumulation, rules of acquisition, rules of disposition, rules of attribution, of deference to some sort of formal hierarchy at work, in social life, in social status, in social media. These rules have concocted very specific measurements in dollars, in followers, in likes, subscribers, possessions. I remember the SMART, S-M-A-R-T model I learned in business school more than 20 years ago. It's about goals that are supposed to be specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-related. It's still used today. Imagine that. It's nothing less than an insult to the potential of human imagination. It's pure dogma that creeps into our souls. The system wants us to live smart lives in templates, in patterns of habits, of buying, of building relationships. The system wants to standardize our thoughts, our passions, our emotional life so it can sell something to us. I too made the mistakes. I bought the lies. I fell to delusion. Over time, after some struggle, I have trained my emotions to resist this pressure. It's almost second nature for me now. Another super bubble is the one that it is all about identity. It has a thick skin, but of a different kind. Identity is often misunderstood. Again, I too made my mistakes until I formed an opinion about what identity was all about. What is the fuss with political correctness? with the cancel culture? What are the real dramas? What are the manufactured dramas? Many people identify with their skin color, others with their gender, others with their belonging to a nation or to a religion or to the fan club of a sports team or to a political party or to an ideology, to a hobby, to a language, to the belief about the right to own guns or not, the right of women to have full control over their bodies. Regardless of how wise a human is, that human cannot escape a bubble of some identity. For many humans, identity is so important that it often overpowers the bubble of capitalism. People can do violence when their identity is hurt, but not so much when, let's say, they are fired from the job by a greedy capitalist. Interestingly, philosopher Derek Parfit said that personal identity does not matter for our survival. What matters is the psychological connectedness, namely of memory and character, and continuity, overlapping chains of strong connectedness. In plain language, what makes you you is the gradual accumulation of memories, the gradual evolution of your character, and the absence of shocks in your life. Some severe shocks can disrupt the feeling of you being you, and then your identity is transformed. All this talk about identity is enormously important because it stirs very strong emotions. I talk with friends and folks about gender affirmation and expression. Is it too much? Why does it annoy sensibilities of older people and conservatives? Has the Me Too movement gone too far and emasculated men? I don't think so. Has the pandemic given reasons to governments to subvert our freedoms and therefore our identities? These questions for many are way more important than how much money Elon Musk has. They are even more important than the state of poverty many people live in. All too often, people vote for elitist politicians, quasi-fascists, against their material interests because those politicians promise they will safeguard the identities of voters. They never do. They always lie. It pisses me off that the weakest, the poorest, the least fortunate are the most manipulated. The bubble of identity is causing clashes of civilizations, clashes between friends, families, political adversaries, between social classes, poor and rich, white and non-white. The bubble of freedoms has very thin skin. People go in and out of it depending on circumstance, convenience, bias, hypocrisy, arrogance, ignorance, political calculation, and of course, desire to dominate others. Freedoms are deeply misunderstood, especially their boundaries. For some humans, the freedom to practice their religion applies only to them, but not to others. Some humans think that vaccines are government's attempt to steal their freedom, even though they do not object when government forces them by law to stop at the red light or to wear seatbelts. Governments need checks on them as much as the ruling class needs to learn limits, as much as work needs to be democratized. Governments should be improved, democratized even more, not dismantled or given away to oligarchs. How about the freedom of speech? Should it be unlimited, without critical thinking? Is it desirable? Who checks what is right or wrong? Who is the authority to tell who deserves to be silenced? Ideally, everybody. When media defends the capitalist establishment, that is allegedly free speech. But you and me should have the equal power and exposure to present the opposing argument. We do not have that power. So our freedom of speech is less than the media establishment. I want to see maximum freedom of speech, but equal for everyone. This is how we dilute and dissolve extremism and abuse. I am against canceling voices, any voices, anywhere. This is how democracy and equality taken together are the best defenders of freedom. I feel strongly about this, and it motivates how I read news and how I see the shortcomings of justice. Another struggle I have is with the bubble of techno-optimism and enlightened naivete. This bubble also gives me jitters, and I try to avoid being sucked into it. I'm referring here to a horde of scientists, public intellectuals, some of them belonging to the so-called intellectual dark web or the new optimism movement, business leaders, usually with podcasts and popular books, who knowingly defend the status quo of capitalism, make money from it, and want to see it flourishing. They reject the idea that we need to drop capitalism because we are heading towards climate disaster. They believe technology and business innovation will save humans. Many have huge following, support, and approval. I find that disappointing and somehow comical because these enlightened, naive intellectuals choose to keep their audience in darkness. They never talk about increasing democracy for everybody and prosperity for everybody. They certainly refuse to accept limits on the wealth and power of the elites. Some of them seed too much discord that is distasteful and jarring because they attack the identities of some minorities. It's a naive strategy, I think, and for me is a source of sadness. I struggle with the bubble of comedy, sarcasm, irony. I call this smiling escapism. I put late-night talk shows here, talking heads who blend tragedies with jokes. Of course, not all comedians are in this bubble. Those who live in this bubble are usually rich and popular. I was watching some of them with the hope that they would take on the capitalist establishment. But they joke about how many children Elon Musk has. And they do not challenge the system that allows the rise of these oligarchs. They do not advocate for democracy at work, economic democracy, limits on wealth, on consumption. They do like their houses, cars, and privileges. It took me some time to become disaffected with this bubble, and when I did, I stopped finding them funny. I now laugh watching comedians who are much poorer, smarter, and funnier. There's something odd about becoming rich. You are not funny anymore, even if you become the president of the United States or a multimillionaire creator of some sitcom show. It's very likely that many of us may appear overbearing to somebody else, including me. It's like that meme about offense, which says that offense cannot be given, can only be taken. That is fine. We can live with that as long as we truly internalize the right of others to preserve and defend their dignity. There is no bubble of thinking about dignity. We all assume we have it, we all assume we deserve it, and some of us are willing to trade some of their dignity for money, for survival, or sometimes for fun. Dignity is a quality that is constructed socially. I feel it needs a social defense. I'm embarrassed and I feel helpless when I see many people sacrificing their dignity and selling it for a very low price. And I'm using a metaphor here because dignity can never be a commodity. When you work for a low wage, or when your boss is asking you to do something beneath your dignity, even when you make an average wage and you do it, that is an unnecessary sacrifice. I see it happening too often. My struggle is to preserve my dignity just as I preserve my freedoms. For me, this is a permanent awareness of others in the sense that I do not extend my boundaries over the boundaries of others, and I expect others to do the same. A few examples. I could never own a business and have employees hired for a wage. I believe the entire value produced in a business must be shared democratically among all workers. I could never accept to be a manager wherever without the consent and votes of my colleagues. I try my best to overcome my biases and offer equal consideration of dignity to all peoples, regardless of their identity selection. Because I'm a flawed human, this is a continuous struggle. I get the energy sometimes from the hope that humans living in all these isolated bubbles of thinking will come to realize they have common ground, which is the grave threat of climate disaster and the need to accept material limits. Talking about limits, designing limits, putting numbers on limits can be the one thing that can pop all the bubbles and release humans into a vast ocean of togetherness. But not that kind of forced togetherness like the failed communist projects have attempted, but a togetherness of human collectives living within the material limits of nature. These limits are something along the lines of a maximum income, maximum wealth, way below $1 billion, a maximum carbon budget that we burn, a maximum limit on how much we extract from Earth, and so on. I have personal limits myself, quite concrete. I will update you when I reach them. I would like to thank my Patreons for helping me stay independent and ad-free. If you can support this channel, you can learn how to do just that by visiting my Patreon page at patreon.com/vladbunea. The best and easiest way to support here on YouTube is by clicking the subscribe button below and the notification bell. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it makes a big difference for the YouTube algorithm. Have a great week, everyone.